Welcome again. We are concluding our study of Pema Chödron's really incredible book, Practicing Peace in Times of War. And we're at the concluding chapter where she pulls it all together. And excuse me, it's my asthma medicine. It causes hoarseness. So let's start with a quote. However we work with our minds and hearts, these days will impact the future of this planet. The seeds you planted yesterday have the result in your own life today, and the seeds that millions of people around the world are planting in each of our countries creates the world situation today being as painful as it is. So it starts with individual minds creating solidified habit patterns and acting, and then collectively as families, then as communities, as countries acting, all with a shared karma of their individual habit patterns creating the future. So let's go back to our individual minds and review how Pema has pointed it out so clearly, how we hold our patterns and solidify them, and also have the potential to open and unravel them. So we understand that there are many things that trigger us, and that when we are triggered, we have a story or a narrative that causes our mind to chaotically race with justifying thoughts. Thoughts that justify how we react or respond. And this can be positive or negative. The moment of the trigger, the future is unformed. Then our mind starts racing, and we either pause or we react. So we know that when the process begins, there is an inner feeling, a shempa, which is the feeling of a fixation of movement towards that narrative, and wanting to be out of pain, either by, if it's anger, hitting back, or the get me out of here with this substance. So there is a grasping towards a movement of get me out of here in one way or another, fixing this with increased aggression or escape. And we know that underneath this is this incredible illusion that we've created that life should be comfortable for us and we should be happy at least most of the time, and life should go smoothly. We know that this is not true when we open our eyes. When we think of in our Sangha, just our small group, the number of us that have family members with very critical illnesses, the number of deaths of friends this week, we know it's not true, but we want to maintain that illusion desperately. And we also carry the illusion that whatever we're suffering is caused by outside circumstances and outside actors, that essentially there's someone to blame for our discomfort. So she's taken us this far, and now she's introducing the concept of karma. And I want to go back to that very simple prayer that from the time of the Buddha. I'm of the nature to grow old. I cannot escape old age. I'm of the nature to grow ill. I cannot escape sickness. I'm of the nature to die. I cannot escape death. I will be separated from everything and everyone I hold dear. My only true possession is my actions. Okay, this is the key, this last line. This is the introduction to karma. My only true possession is my actions. Everything is changing. Everything in our world is impermanent. Our relationships are impermanent. But what we carry are the seeds we sow, our karma, our habitual patterns, and our ability to pause and watch the impermanence and choose the forming of the future. So in reading her book, Pema likes to use the word insecurity and uncertainty. And it's really hard to find a vocabulary to express these concepts that we're talking about. And one word that I noticed she used in the last chapter is that impermanence has to do with the open spaciousness in which the future is unformed. So that moment we pause when we're triggered, our future and how we're affecting everyone around us as our next step ripples out in effect. In that pause, the future is unformed. And so that's why it's so important to look with curiosity and vulnerability to that quality of, in this moment, I am forming the future in multiple dynamic and interconnected ways. And what I choose in this moment is called a formation. So that formation affects me in terms of which pattern I'm choosing to strengthen. And it also affects everyone around me in subtle ways that I may not be able to see, creating the society that I'm living with. So Venerable Khandro Rinpoche likes to express it that essentially the nature of reality and the nature of our minds is this Dharmakaya. And so the view that we're looking at is that's who we really are, this open spaciousness that has the nature of compassion or the flavor of compassion. And as soon as we form the idea of dualism, I am, you are, then a consciousness arises that is colored by confusion. And this consciousness is something that goes from life to life to life. And all the habits and patterns of life to life to life are sown like seeds into this consciousness. And so we cover that pristine perfection with millions and millions of habits, which we can certainly see in our own lifetime if we're not open to life after life. But let's say we're at this point covered with habits. And we know that these habits affect those around us. And we can see in our families how we have a family karma of habits. So we can see how our moment-to-moment actions affect our current family. We yell at somebody or impatient with somebody or are kind to somebody, are helpful to somebody, we're creating family patterns. And at the same time, when we look at how our society is formed, we see that we have family patterns that go back generations and family patterns that are in the process of forming the future. So I want to just talk about it in the context of my father's side of the family. So my father was born in Kentucky, and he was born on a very, very, very poor farm. So low income, barefoot kid. And he had an open curiosity about the world in the future. And so he chose to go into the Army during World War II to get a free education. He went to West Point. So let's say he started with views of racism that were normal to his era in a poor Kentucky family. And during COVID, my brother did a lot of historical research. So if we go back in our family far enough, there was a prosperous farm. And a couple of grandparents before my father, if there was a prosperous farm in Kentucky, there were probably slaves. So let's go back to the great-great-great-great-grandparent on my father's side, starting with definitely racist. Then we get 2 generations to my father, opening his world in the Army during World War II when it was integrated forcibly, carrying the views from his family, but having an open enough mind that his mind was changeable. And so the effects of the world saying now in the Army it's going to be in this way interacted with his openness. And then he had children of the 60s who were questioning and changing with the civil rights era. So you start to see this porous interdependence, interconnectivity, and the potential of open minds changing the family dynamic and the family karma. So his views gradually changed. His children's views were very different. And his grandchildren and great-grandchildren are in multicultural families. So you can start to see how individual minds affect each other, affect a family, affect a culture, and now the minds of the grandchildren and great-grandchildren have a very different view and action in everyone they touch around the views of different cultures and different races. So we're living in this world that is impermanent, is changing, and how open we are and how open our minds are changes our family. And as enough families change, then there is a gradual collective, let's say, community change, and eventually a gradual collective country change and world change. But it all starts with the individual mind, one thought by one thought, and how that ripples out. So let's go back to Pema, because she wants us to see how we take responsibilities with our own minds is forming this unformed future. So it is an act that's having an effect both on us and the world at the same time. Now, this moment of when we're triggered is an open moment before the future is changed. And her suggestion is to look at either shock or awe. And we start to see that this open moment that's hard to see when we're triggered is something that's actually familiar to us. We've experienced it before. And if we can have the same curiosity that we have in the moment of awe, let's say, or that we have experienced in shock, we can be more comfortable when it occurs to us in the moment of being triggered. It won't feel quite so frightening. So, for instance, the other day in my backyard, a fox walked by, and there was a moment of awe to see. I'm in suburbia, to see this beautiful animal walk so close. So there was a moment of just the beauty and surprise, just opening my mind. All my narratives of the day dropped away. And then there was this unbiased, spacious, open moment. And then, like a normal person in the 20th century, I went looking for my camera. So a habit pulled in. But this open moment is, we see a beautiful sunset, we see the ocean. We have many, many open moments where our discursive mind just rests for a minute. So that's a very simple, ordinary one. What I want to show you is how it's the same, and not only is the same, how we can recognize that there is wisdom in that moment. So let's say the fox walks by. Before I even name it as a fox, the beauty of this surprise is just open. There's a clarity of seeing just in the surprise of it, and a delight, let's say, a feeling of open delight. And that open delight has a quality of non-discursive clarity. Okay, now let's look at when we're triggered. We get angry or impatient. But in that moment, we're starting to develop a habit of saying, oh, okay, here it is. I can see that's arising. What if I stop right this second and look at what's going on? And this is because we no longer believe that the story or the narrative is going to help. We know that over and over again, our reaction has not helped. It just makes us hurt more. And we can feel the buzz of the energy of the fixation or the shempa wanting to go into what's comfortable. That habit pattern of anger, even though it hurts us, is really comfortable because we know it so well. So we want to understand that we also know this open moment well. And we can be more curious about that than the pull of the narrative. So Pema was saying, and has said several times, that it is so uncomfortable when we stop in this moment, that it can feel frightening not to go into that comfortable habit pattern, and it can feel physically painful. And she says sometimes she was so frightened she just thought, I'll just die. This is I can't imagine anything except for the habit pattern. And so she asked Khenmo Rinpoche about it, And he said, oh yes, this is because you are burning all those karmic seeds. So you're burning the karmic seeds of millions of instances of reacting with anger. And it is uncomfortable. And you're burning the karmic views that you have embedded from generations of your family, saying it's justified to be angry in this situation. It's been demonstrated by your parents had it demonstrated by their parents. Then in our family, we stand up for ourselves, we do this, this, and this. Whatever your family story is, we certainly have family patterns that have been demonstrated. In my family, it was more repression. If you get angry, you stuff it. So pausing in this openness is changing the karmic history of yourself and your family, because in the present, you're affecting your family now and demonstrating to future generations a different pattern. We are burning up those karmic seeds, and we are in the openness of that moment. We're seeing very clearly. We can see with distinct clarity, this is the pull of the habit. This is the pain of not going into the narrative. And this is the impermanence of that pain shifting. And this is the openness I see when I sit with the impermanence of that pain shifting. This is the spaciousness that arises in the pause. And so here we see that incredible understanding that we have in the Vajrayana, that the essence of the poisons of our mind, or the nature of the poisons of our mind, are actually wisdom. So in the pause, the open moment, the clarity, the anger can see so clearly why the justification, point by point by point, why the justification has worked in the past. The anger can see so clearly that it has not helped. There is a clarity in the awareness that is observing the trigger and the pause and the openness. So what is arising from the anger, its actual nature, is this brilliant clarity. And in this brilliant clarity, karmic seeds are burned up, and the unformed future that is building with our individual mind rippling out to our families and our community is a future that has this karmic seed of openness and clarity in it. And the potential for others to witness a different kind of response that gradually, slowly, maybe too slowly, maybe, gradually shifts views and actions. So here we see, if we look at generations of one family, still in the process of change, views and actions shifting that are contributing to a culture changing and shifting. And that the shifting is a contribution of each of our individual minds, and that we can have this incredible commitment to seeing our minds for what they truly are, even in the context of strong emotions, which means we're shifting our relationship to those strong emotions and understanding that if I go into each of these strong emotions deeply, there's going to be a nature of wisdom that's uncovered. So instead of being afraid, instead of feeling guilty that they're there, instead of repressing, we can move into curiosity and commitment to the forming that is in relationship to our Buddha nature. So then Pema concludes with, this is very complex. And in fact, in the new year, we're going to go deeply into understanding karma and how karma is forming our lives. But she's saying, okay, I presented something that's complex. I've given you a lot of material, but let's keep it really simple as we conclude. Just 2 instructions that she gives us at the very end. But they're so beautiful. Let the moments of our experience pierce us to the heart. So the awe pierces us to the heart. The shock, the openness resulting from a shock pierces us to the heart. We allow ourselves to stay. The triggers pierce us to the heart. We allow ourselves to just stay and be pierced, knowing that the piercing reveals wisdom and is part of the formation of a global future. That we are in this moment unraveling our patterns and family patterns, and that it may be uncomfortable. But as all these patterns unravel, all the blaming, all the judging, all the biased narratives, as we allow those to drop away, we experience greater peace, greater inner space, greater clarity. So that's the first instruction. The second instruction is always connect this with compassion. She has a lifelong commitment to the sending and taking practice, which she has simplified to make it so accessible. So in this moment, when we're letting experience pierce us to the heart, connect in that moment with, at this moment, many mothers have lost children and are feeling deep grief. At this moment, just like me, many people have lost dear friends. And may my grief, felt and observed as impermanent, allow a greater preciousness and compassion to arise. Or at this moment, many people are feeling despair about war or guns, just like me. May we see the impermanence of our own patterns of aggression, our own family patterns, our own cultural patterns unravel in the context of one mind holding unbiased, spacious openness in the face of their own anger, and allowing that authentically felt experience of opening and pausing ripple out to the families and the communities that we interact with. And holding that same spaciousness and compassion as we make our commitments to actions that lead to change. This compassion and connection, changing our attitude of blaming the outer experiences and people to welcoming them, softening the barriers, seeing the felt experience of life to be the same human nature of not wanting pain, not wanting suffering, and wanting happiness. And seeing our interconnected web of all our tiny thoughts that become actions, either contributing to increased suffering or assuaging suffering in the world. So let's just sit with this a moment. Taking it all in of how our thoughts and actions meet in the present moment and unformed future. And we participate in adding to suffering or assuaging suffering. Let's take 5 or 6 minutes. So, thoughts and reflections about our unformed future that is dynamic, shifting, changing, not yet controlled by our patterns, and affecting each other globally. Everybody is still reflecting. Think of that moment, though, that triggering moment, as in the pause, the future and the karmic seeds of all the world haven't been formed yet. And then the moment we act, it starts shifting and changing. Kathy Mills.
I confess, this is the real easy stuff. I'm being sarcastic. There's an instance in which there's a family member that has been that always triggers. I can always predict when she's going to trigger me. And I've been aware of that recently. And the best that I can do at the moment, currently, is just not react. It takes every bone in my body not to react. And that's sort of as far as I've gotten. And, I just feel like I have like steel bolts, tying me down emotionally, not to react, because it's been such a big trigger. And I remember driving home from her house recently and thinking, okay, what do I need to be thinking about anyway? And just as a comment, I just, after your talk, and I was just hearing the song, he's got the whole world in his hands, and it made me think we've got the whole world in our hands in terms of the consequences of each action.
Yeah, it's I'm sorry. Why don't we turn off YouTube for our discussion and maybe the echo? So, bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn may it arise, where it is born may it not decline, but ever increase.